Quiet on set. Speed. And action.
I know it was you, Fredo. You broke my heart.
You know how to whistle, don't you, Steve? You just put your lips together and blow.
Welcome to the Foot and Friends on Film podcast, discussing everything about cinema. Now here's your host, Nick Baylor.
What's in the bar?
Houston, we have a problem.
You can't handle the truth.
I'm not what she said. You're crazy.
Welcome to the official podcast of Foot and Friends on Film.com, where we discuss everything about cinema. I'm your host, Nick Mailer. On today's episode, part 4 of our series of the greatest acting performances of all time. We've been to lead actor, lead actress, supporting actress, and now supporting actor. John's going to get on the phone and give us his list of the top 15. Time to get your popcorn and take your seats. This is a feature presentation. As mentioned, we're the official podcast of Foot and Friends on Film.com, where our motto is any film you haven't seen is a new experience. Today we're talking about the 15 greatest supporting actor performances. You know the drill. Let's get on the phone with the big man. Please welcome John H. Foote. So we're here today with part 4 of our series of the greatest performances in cinematic history. We've gone through lead actor and actress and supporting actress, and today we're talking about a category which is often my favorite at come Academy Awards season. That's Best Supporting Actor. We have some ties on the list. It was impossible to narrow it down to just 15, and we've got a handful of honorable mentions. I'm going to start off with the first one that came to mind for me is Christoph Waltz in Inglourious Basterds. This is a performance where he's absolutely terrifying and charming at the same time. He speaks 4 languages. I've never felt tension like I did in the opening scene with the French farmer of this movie. And to English-speaking audiences, this guy came out of nowhere like a bat out of hell. And I think he might have come close to matching a performance from the previous year that we're going to talk about as one of the great villains in movie history. I think that was an Oscar richly deserved. John, do you agree?
I do. The first one, Inglourious Basterds, he was wonderful. I don't agree with the second Oscar at all, but he was tremendous in Inglourious Basterds, and he's on my runner-up list too.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I don't agree with him winning for Django Unchained. That year would have my vote would have gone to my next honorable mention, which is Tommy Lee Jones in Lincoln.
And yeah, it's a great performance. It's a wonderful performance. He was terrific in the movie. There were a lot of good supporting performances that year. I would have gone with Sam Jackson in Django Unchained, who's one of my greatest ever.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. I have to just throw a quick mention to this next one just because I'm a fanboy and I was pissed there was no Oscar nomination, but I want to give a shout out to Robert Downey Jr. in Avengers Endgame. This is few actors have the chance to really develop a character over such a long period of time in so many movies. And it was his final outing as the character who started the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I think he went out with both a literal and metaphorical bang. I thought he was great in the movie. And I know you can be jaded by superhero movies, but I think this film and that performance won you over a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I thought I was kind of hoping he'd be nominated for an Oscar as well. Is it one of the greatest supporting performances? I don't know. I don't know about that.
No, and I'm not saying it deserves to be in the top 15, but I just wanted to give a shout out while we're doing honorable mentions. Another one that I want to mention is Andy Serkis in the Lord of the Rings trilogy as Gollum. This is a guy who I think has been denied a lot of Oscar nominations he should have had. And as far as creating a character that was unique and unlike anything else, This really set the bar high, and he's been there again and again. And I know you love Lord of the Rings.
I do, and I thought he should have been nominated. I thought Sean Astin should have been nominated as Samwise Gamgee, and Viggo Mortensen as Aragorn all should have been nominated for the third film. Ian McKellen was nominated for the first film, but the other guys just seemed to grow in stature and become extraordinary over the course of the trilogy, and I thought all three should have been nominated for that final one.
Any honorable mentions you want to throw out?
Yeah, I got a few. Burgess Meredith in Rocky, veteran actor. He had been in A Mice and Men in 1939, playing George, and was a veteran character actor. He'd been around forever, and he finally got a great part as Mickey Goldmill in the Rocky series. He was never better than he was in the first one. Great performance. Lon Chaney Jr. in Of Mice and Men as Lenny, a veteran actor of the Universal Horror series. He was best known as the Wolfman. But once he played George or Lenny in A Mice and Men, and he was spectacular. He showed what a wonderful actor he could be as this gentle giant who was just far too powerful for his own good. Carl Malden for 2 films, A Streetcar Named Desire and On the Waterfront. He's one of the great character actors of all time. George C. Scott in The Hustler, just the personification of absolute evil. We've already talked about Christoph Waltz. Tom Cruise in Magnolia. It killed me not to include this in the top 15 because it's such a great piece of acting. Javier Bardem in No Country for Old Men, again.
Nice.
Probably should be on the top 15, but I couldn't decide who to bump. And one more, Tom Hanks in A League of Their Own. If only to hear him say to the blonde, "There's no crying in baseball." You know, for that line alone, he deserved a supporting actor nomination.
Right on. Okay, let's get into it. As mentioned, we've got a lot to cram in, and we kind of cheated. So right off the bat with number 15, we have a tie. The first entry at 15 is Ben Kingsley in Sexy Beast.
If anybody had seen Ben Kingsley in Gandhi, they would think that he was this saintly, gentle, kind man. And he played that type of character again as Oscar Stern in Schindler's List, and he also played Simon Wiesenthal on HBO. In Sexy Beast, he's Don Logan, and the first time we see him from behind, his bald head, he looks like a bullet, and this is just a testosterone, aggressive, sociopathical maniac. You can't take your eyes off him. He is absolutely terrifying. This is one of the most frightening performances I've ever seen, and I couldn't believe I was watching Ben Kingsley. He was nominated for the Academy Award. I don't know how he lost. I mean, did the members of the Academy see Gandhi? Did they see Sexy Beast side by side and watch the range this guy had? Because it was astonishing. He was absolutely riveting. He was like a chunk of muscle, just a raw chunk of muscle throughout the movie. Deadly, dangerous, totally terrifying.
Who did he lose to?
Jim Broadbent in Iris.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, good actor, good actor, no question, but really?
So tied for 15, we also have Ralph Fiennes in Schindler's List.
And again, another villain. And I think we'll find a lot of the supporting performances are villains.
Yes, for sure.
They tend to be very interesting. Ralph Fiennes played Amon Goth, the maniacal killer who enjoyed being a Nazi. He was very much a believer in Hitler. He believed in the SS. He believed that the Jews were inferior human beings. And some mornings he would take to his balcony with his rifle and shoot them for no particular reason other than he could. And Oskar Schindler swindled, bribed, lied, and cheated him to keep his 1,100 Jews alive. It was the first time we'd really seen Ralph Fiennes. He'd been a television actor in England, but with this film, he became an instant star. He won the New York Film Critics Award and was nominated for an Oscar as Best Supporting Actor. Should have won, I think.
Just reminds me actually of another honorable mention I want to throw out there very, very quickly. We don't really need to talk about it, but Ralph Fiennes in Bruges as the Cockney gangster, one of the funniest performances I've ever seen in a movie I love. Tremendous range, and he's shown it time and again.
He could be on the list for the Harry Potter films too as Voldemort. He was wonderful in those.
Yeah. Coming in at 14, this is one that shouldn't surprise any. We have Joe Pesci in Goodfellas as Tommy DeVito.
It was really hard not to put this one higher, but I do have a Pesci performance up higher. This is the kind of performance for which Joe Pesci is known, just an aggressive, vicious, psychotic maniac. And he was great as Tommy DeVito. He won the Academy Award. He gave one of the greatest Oscar speeches in history, saying it was my privilege, thank you, and walked off stage. He's a short guy. He's about 5'4", but he radiates danger. And when he gets in the zone, when he gives you that voice and that stare, he's absolutely chilling. Watch him at the card game when he shoots Spider, and then they come back and they're playing again, and he shoots him again. This time he kills him, and he has no conscience whatsoever about it. He lipped off to him, I killed him. You heard him. He was breaking my balls. He's just a lunatic in this movie. His death scene is one of the great death scenes in movie history. It's heartbreaking, but absolutely deserved. He deserves to die because he's a monster. The I'm funny scene, you think I'm funny scene, is a classic. And the tension of that scene, seeing it for the first time, is absolutely riveting.
Yeah, and that was based on an interaction Pesci had seen with a gangster at a restaurant, and he had a lot to do with including that in the film. But you're right, it's just the tension building. Like, what am I like? I'm a clown. I'm here to amuse you. What the way I talk?
Yep.
You know. I read Nicholas Pileggi's Wise Guy, and Tommy DeVito is named after the member of the Four Seasons musical group. And actually, a young Joe Pesci is a character in Jersey Boys, a later film. But
Yes.
He was based on Tommy Two Guns DeSimone, who, when Henry Hill, the real-life counterpart to Ray Liotta's character, was asked about the portrayal of Tommy in Goodfellas, I was shocked to find out that he said the only difference between Pesci and the real Tommy was that Tommy was a younger man. He was about 6'5". He was massive, and he had a little bit more of a temper than Joe Pesci did in the movie, which is hard to imagine.
Can you imagine? Unbelievable.
But you're right. He's described as a man with absolutely no conscience, shoots a guy dead on the street one day just to show off his bravado. And yeah, we're going to talk about Pesci again. Moving up the list at 13, we've got another tie. First of all, Martin Landau in Ed Wood, one of my favorite Tim Burton films.
Martin Landau was a curious actor. He'd worked with James Dean when he was younger and did a lot of stage work in New York, worked at the Actors Studio quite a lot, and then got on television and ended up kind of typecast in Mission Impossible and then Space 1999. When Tim Burton was making Ed Wood, he needed a veteran character actor to play Bela Lugosi, and he cast Martin Landau. And Landau pored over research, watching all the old Bela Lugosi films. He interviewed everybody that had known Lugosi, which was no easy feat. Most of them were gone. And then he sunk himself into the role. And he was absolutely brilliant in the part. Bela Lugosi was a real foul-mouthed vulgarian. And when anyone came up to him and suggested he was Boris Karloff, he lost his mind. He hated the fact that Boris Karloff played the Frankenstein monster and lumbered around, where he played Dracula, which was a real part, demanded real acting. So I thought Martin Landau was brilliant. He won every Critics Award and the Golden Globe and the Oscar for this performance. It's one of the most honored performances in movie history, and richly deserved from a longtime character actor.
Tying with Landau, we have Christian Bale in The Fighter.
Yeah, great performance. I mean, again, he leaned down. He lost weight as a heroin addict who had one time been a boxing champion, and now he coaches his brother, and he's kind of living through his brother. Every move his brother makes, he's making it on the corner of the ring, and the brother knows he needs him. He knows he needs him as a coach, but he really doesn't want him because the fact that he does seek the glory through his brother. But there's a connection. They're brothers. They're brothers after all. And it's a wonderful piece of acting. 30 seconds into the movie, you know the kind of ride you're going to get because you can't take your eyes off Christian Bale. He's terrific.
Yeah, that opening scene on the couch where you see him emaciated, with balding and talking deep into that Boston accent, it's hard to believe it's the same guy who was Batman. It's the range of this guy is unreal.
It is. He's fantastic.
Be sure to check out our podcast, Badass Bale. We did an entire show on Christian Bale. That's on our YouTube channel. Coming in at number 12, I know this is one of your absolute favorites, Bruce Dern in Coming Home.
I love Bruce Dern. I think he's one of the greatest actors in movie history, and he never really got the credit he deserved. He owned the 70s. He was best friends with Jack Nicholson. They worked together in a film called The King of Marvin Gardens, and everybody respected Bruce Dern as an actor. But he got typecast playing crazies. He's one of the very few men on screen to ever kill John Wayne, and he shot him in the back. So instantly, he was typecast as a coward and a maniac. In Coming Home, he plays Bob High, the Vietnam hawk. He can't wait to get there. And when he gets there, it's nothing like he thought it would be. And when his wife goes to meet him on Liberty in Hong Kong, she finds that he's a different man. He walks around the room at one point talking about what's happening, and he says to her, "My men were chopping off heads," because that's what they were into. He can't believe what the American soldiers are doing there. And when he comes home, he discovers that his wife has had an affair with a Vietnam veteran. So the war has cheated him, the military's cheated him, and his wife has cheated him. And he's got no alternative. He commits suicide, swimming into the ocean at the end of the film, to the tune of Tim Buckley's wonderful song, Once I Was. And, you know, Jane Fonda and Jon Voight deservedly won Academy Awards for their work in the film. Bruce Dern should have had an Oscar too. He was absolutely spectacular.
Coming in at number 11, we have a three-way tie, all for the same movie. Burt Lahr, Ray Bolger, and Jack Haley as the Scarecrow, the Tin Man, and the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz.
No way I could split them up. No way.
Of course not.
Of the performances, Burt Lahr is probably the more iconic for the Cowardly Lion.
Yep.
But how do you split them up? I mean, if somebody could tell me how to do it, tell me, and I'll do it. But I don't believe you could talk me into it. They're perfect together. They're a perfect trio. Burt Lahr was a stage actor largely for tragedy. He was well known for his work in Samuel Beckett plays, specifically Waiting for Godot. Jack Haley was a song and dance man, and he actually replaced Buddy Ebsen when the makeup for the Tin Man made Buddy Ebsen deathly ill. He nearly died. And Ray Bolger was a rubber-limbed song and dance guy who was perfect as the Scarecrow. Together, they were Dorothy's friends in the Land of Oz. They were also the farmhands at the beginning and end of the film. And they're iconic, every single one of them. In terms of performance, yeah, Burt Lahr is probably the edge. He's probably the best of them. But to separate them, I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, I also just want to mention, seeing as we're reminiscing about this, one of the greatest films of all time, it also contains my absolute favorite quote from any movie, and it's when the wizard is bestowing the gifts upon the three friends, and before he gives the Tin Man the clock shaped like a heart, he says to him, "You want a heart, you don't know how lucky you are not to have one. Hearts will never be practical until they can be made unbreakable." And then he says my favorite line, "Just remember that a heart is not measured by how much you love, but by how much you are loved by others." I'm getting goosebumps
Perfect.
just thinking about it.
Perfect. It's perfect. And it's full of quotes like that. You know, it's such a wonderful movie. It's hard to believe it's so old and yet so timeless.
Yeah, great music as well. Coming in at number 10, we have Joel Grey in Cabaret.
Yeah, terrific performance. This Joel Grey portrayed this part on Broadway, and when Bob Fosse decided to make the film, he immediately cast Joel Grey. It was the first person he cast. And the MC is a tricky part because he's a metaphor for what was happening in Germany at the time. He represents decadence, he represents evil, he represents Nazism, and he represents Hitler. And he's creepy, you know? He's a kind of a ghostly character in and out of the film. We never see him out of makeup. We never see him out of the Kit Kat Club. And he's a real haunting presence throughout the movie. And Joel Grey did a great, great job. If you watch him singing with Liza Minnelli, the famous Money song, the greed and the look on his face is just riveting. And then he dances with a gorilla at the end of the film and says an aside to the audience, "If you could see her through my eyes, she wouldn't look Jewish at all." And it's a really powerful piece of acting. And he bested Al Pacino for The Godfather for this film. Now, Al Pacino was in the wrong category. He should have been in Best Actor with Marlon Brando. But that's what the Academy thought of Joel Grey, to give him the Oscar over Pacino.
Coming in at number 9, we have Gene Hackman in Unforgiven.
Another villain, Big Bill. Clint Eastwood goes on a bounty hunt to find a guy who cut up a hooker, and he arrives in Big Whiskey. And in Big Whiskey, Little Bill rules supreme. He is a vicious, angry, hateful man who smiles all the time, but it's all fake because he's going to get close enough to hit you once he's got your gun. Gene Hackman plays him as a complete sadist and a monster in every way. He is truly terrifying. And I've interviewed Gene Hackman. I've met Gene Hackman. He's a great guy, a nice guy to talk to, but there's an edge to him. You wouldn't want to piss him off. And a few guys have pissed him off and faced his wrath. And we see his wrath on full display in Unforgiven. It might be the greatest performance of his career.
Coming in at number 8, something we mentioned in the intro, Samuel L. Jackson in Django Unchained.
Yeah, this is one of the great unsung performances in movie history. And I truly can't believe he was not more acclaimed for his work in this film. He is a treacherous, evil African-American who is in the pocket of his owner. And make no mistake, Leonardo DiCaprio owns him and makes no mistake about it. But he's his most trusted slave. You know, he's a house slave. He's older, but he sees everything that's going on and he figures things out very quickly. And when they shoot Calvin, he's done. His life is over and he knows it, because who's he got now? He's got no one. And he's such a vile human being. Even when he's shot, both knees are blown away. He's still screaming at Django, "God damn you, Django, I'll get you, you son of a bitch." And the house blows up. And what a way to go. What a perfect way to go. And I think it's the best thing Sam Jackson's ever done, and he's been awfully good before.
It says something in a film like this where you have black slaves, characters that far more often than not are supposed to gain your sympathies, but he manages to play one who is just so utterly detestable right from the get-go.
You hate him. You absolutely hate him because he's not helping his people. You know, he's as white as Leonardo DiCaprio without the benefits of being white.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, I think it's unsung to a level that's shameful. I'm with you 100% on that. I think it's an absolutely brilliant performance by a very gifted actor.
Yes, I agree.
If we were to ever do a podcast on Samuel L. Jackson, it would probably be 18 hours long, just because of how huge his filmography is.
Well, he's got a huge filmography, and you know, the trick to somebody that does that much work, say John Wayne, is to find 10 or 15 performances that represent the best of what they did. You know, we could never do a filmography on John Wayne because the guy made 200 films, but we could find the 10 or 15 best movies he ever did. And we will do a podcast on John Wayne at some point, as we will Sam Jackson.
Cool. Coming in at number 7, Robert Shaw in Jaws.
Jaws is a great horror film. I mean, it's a visceral, angry horror film about a killer shark. And yet the most terrifying moment in the movie is the speech Quint gives, played by Robert Shaw, about the night the SS Indianapolis was sunk by a German submarine. The men went into the water and the sharks came feasting. And we wonder why Quint hates sharks so much. And in this story, he tells us why. Half the men that went into the water are eaten by sharks, torn apart. His buddy, he's in the water next to his buddy and he touches him and he bobs upside down because he's been bitten in half below the waist. And he talks about being the most terrified when the ship had come to rescue him and he was waiting for his turn. He didn't want to be killed before he finally got back into the boat. And Robert Shaw's performance in Jaws was widely acclaimed, you know, hailed as the best supporting performance of the year. And then he was snubbed for Best Supporting Actor. Jaws, which probably should have got 11 or 12 nominations, was nominated for a measly 4 Academy Awards. and it won 3 of them, but it was completely ignored, really. And Shaw should have been there, and he should have won.
We're going to now talk about a performance that any one of our listeners knows John and I love in a movie we both adore, Joe Pesci in The Irishman.
Yeah, Joe Pesci, he's such a wonderful actor. And I was so disappointed when I heard in about 2011 that he was walking away from movies. He'd been terrific in Raging Bull as Jake's younger brother, Joey. He was absolutely hysterical in My Cousin Vinny, terrifying in Goodfellas, equally terrifying in Casino. And then Scorsese and De Niro talk him into playing Vincent in this, Vincent Buffalino in this wonderful film, The Irishman. And I expected a live wire, angry, driven performance from Joe Pesci, and we don't get it. We don't get it. He's laid back. He's calm, and he's so calm because he's so powerful. He doesn't need to lose his cool. He doesn't need to rant and rave. This is real power. You know, they talk in the movies about true power. This is it. When he's talking to Jimmy Hoffa's best friend, played by Robert De Niro, his best friend, and he says to him, he's got to go. We've given him every opportunity, but he's got to go. And that's it. De Niro's going to kill him. And he's going to kill him because Vincent asks him to. And I thought Pesci should have won the Oscar last year. I think he was brilliant. I know you like Pacino in the film too. So do I, in every way. But I thought Pesci had the edge because it was such a drastically different performance than we'd seen him give.
Yeah, absolutely. Like as Russell Buffalino, he is once again playing a mafioso, but so far against type in comparison to everything that we've seen him do. We've seen him be a loose cannon. And there's a great thing on Netflix. It's called The Irishman in Conversation, where you have Pacino, De Niro, Scorsese, and Pesci just sitting in a booth at a restaurant, having drinks, talking about the process of making the movie. And Pesci talks about his trepidation, about how, you know, because he knows Pacino likes to blow up. And he's worried that in a scene with Pacino, he's like, well, what happens if Al blows up? Do I blow up? And this and that. And Scorsese just said, you don't blow up ever. Yep. And to see him play a character that is so calm and so, as you've mentioned before, like even an elegant man, he's, you know, super friendly. He seems approachable. And the first time we see him, he's helping Frank Sheeran fix the timing chain on his truck.
And he's got that great line where he's helping him and he asks who he is and he says, you don't know who I am? Everybody else knows who he is. So he's aware of his power. He's aware of his effect on people. And yet he never plays up to it. Jimmy Hoffa does constantly. Jimmy Hoffa does, but this guy never has to.
Yeah, and we do need to give kudos to Al Pacino. Both of them were nominated for Best Supporting Actor, and it's interesting, as I've mentioned before when we've been talking about this. You see Robert De Niro as Frank Sheeran, and Robert De Niro is really good at being the strong, silent type, and he leans into that and does it beautifully. Al Pacino is very comfortable being the bombastic, loud, and abrasive bully, and he leans.
Jimmy Hoffa
that.
Was, you know,
yeah.
So he found the role of a lifetime in many ways because Jimmy Hoffa was like that,
and he leans into it beautifully. And then Pesci does the opposite of what everyone's expecting him to do. It's in his wheelhouse, but against type. It's a miraculous thing to behold in what was 2019's best movie, hands down. John and I think so. And to any of our listeners who disagree, you're wrong.
Yeah, absolutely wrong.
I had waited 10 years for that movie. I read the book twice, and I couldn't have had higher expectations for a film. And often that can be a movie's death knell. When your expectations are too high, it can tend to disappoint. But The Irishman lived up to all the hype in every single way. It's on Netflix. Go watch it. You only need 3.5 hours. Go watch it. Coming in at number 5, we've got another tie. First of all, we're going to talk about Jack Nicholson in terms of endearment.
Nicholson had a couple other supporting performances that I considered. One of them was in The Departed, where he plays Frank Costello for Marty Scorsese. A great, great performance. The other was as Eugene O'Neill in Reds for Warren Beatty. But I went with Terms of Endearment because, again, it's probably the closest character to Nicholson, but the most against type. He plays a former astronaut who chases younger women and enters into an affair with somebody his own age, played by Shirley MacLaine. And he likes her. He really likes her because she's his equal in so many ways. But he feels himself getting attached and he can't, so he ends it with her. But when her daughter gets sick, he flies to Texas to be with her, and she falls apart on the stairs. He embraces her and holds on to her. And as she's weeping, she touches him and says, "Who would expected you to be a nice guy?" And the audience just went, "She's right. Nobody would. Nobody would expect Nicholson to play this part." Burt Reynolds was originally going to do it. And for whatever reason, it fell apart, and Nicholson stepped in for James L. Brooks. And they've had a very strong friendship ever since. He was spectacular in this. He won every supporting actor award available to him that year, including the Oscar. And a wonderful, wonderful piece of acting. The best movie ever made about mothers and daughters, but also a great film about relationships.
And tying with Nicholson at number 5, an actor, a performance in a movie that I absolutely love and find endlessly rewatchable, J.K. Simmons in Whiplash.
This guy's been a character actor for years, and he still sells insurance on television. But he's been around forever. He played Juno's father in that wonderful movie, Juno. He's just the type of actor you know from so many different films. He was in The Lady Killers with Tom Hanks. He's been around.
Spider-Man.
And here, pardon?
He was in the Spider-Man movies as J. Jonah Jameson.
He was, and he's wonderful in whatever he does. But in this, he was cast as this monstrous teacher who teaches jazz and runs the band. And he is 10 times worse than the drill instructor in Full Metal Jacket because he's monstrous. He's not above throwing a cymbal, a chair, whatever he can get his hands on, he'll throw it. He'll slap them, he'll beat them, he'll emotionally devastate them, verbally abuse them. I mean, I was a teacher. I was a teacher for years, and I like to think I never treated anyone like he did. And it was electrifying. Say again?
No, I was your student, and absolutely not.
I might have embarrassed people a couple times, but I never abused anybody, I hope. You can't take your eyes off him. He's absolutely riveting, and he looks coiled. He looks like every muscle in his body is tight and ready to explode. It's an absolutely brilliant performance that richly deserved the Academy Award.
Yeah, he is absolutely terrifying in it. And again, a villain. And I think what's so disarming about him is that he comes to Miles Teller's character as a friend at first.
Yeah.
Before he goes into the room to audition for the lead chair drums, he's like, just relax. Don't worry about what the other guys are thinking. You've learned from the greats, Buddy Rich. And then he stops him. Not quite my tempo. Rushing, dragging, just a hair. And then he throws a chair at him, and then all bets are off. He's just an absolute loose cannon.
And he does almost the same thing again at the end. They meet each other somewhere, and he befriends Miles again and invites him to play for him and does the exact same thing. Turns the tables on him, humiliates him, and then Miles turns it on him. And the two of them merge. The two of their minds seem to merge, and they become what they both wanted to become, the absolute best in their business, for a few minutes anyway. And it was riveting to watch.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant film with a perfect ending, almost of like Christopher Nolan caliber perfect ending. It just has the perfect moment right at the end of that drum solo. You mentioned J.K. Simmons' career as a character actor still selling insurance. For our listeners who don't know, he is also the yellow M&M.
Yes, he is. You're absolutely
and he's been
right.
doing it since the beginning.
A true actor. I mean, he's done what he has to do.
And to all the geeks out there, I knew we were all thrilled at the end of Spider-Man Far From Home when he reprised his role as J.K. Simmons in this new sort of Alex Jones conspiracy blogger type deal, and hopefully he gets to do more of that. Coming in at number 4, just a sublime performance by one of the greatest actors in the world, certainly at that time, Robert De Niro in The Godfather Part 2.
Yeah, completely unexpected. Coppola had approached Brando to play a younger version of himself. I can't imagine he wanted Brando to play as young as De Niro was, but I've never been able to get an answer. But anyway, Brando wouldn't cooperate. They tried to get Brando to play a part later in the film as the Godfather for his birthday, and he declined, so they shot the scene around him. They cast Robert De Niro as the young Vito, and De Niro immediately got tapes of the movie, hopped on a plane, and went to Sicily, and immersed himself in the culture and the language, and learned to speak the language flawlessly. He mastered the look of Marlon Brando, the body language, the way he held his hands, the way he spoke, the beginnings of that raspy voice, and the way Brando's character radiated danger, but also warmth to his family. You know, when he's holding on to little Michael or little Fredo or boxing with little Sonny, he's a family man, and we get that. And yet, when he has to, he's going to go kill a man because it's going to advance his family and allow him to do more for his family and his neighbors. It's very much the beginning of The Godfather, the beginning of the Vito Corleone story. And De Niro was superb, superb. He was one of 3 actors nominated from The Godfather Part 2 for Best Supporting Actor. He won, and he deserved to win. He was a very popular choice.
And up until just this past year, he was the only actor to have won an Oscar for playing a character that a previous actor had played and won an Oscar for. That record, of course, was now broken by Joaquin Phoenix. And we're going to talk about our third entry on that very subject. Character, role, movie, very near and dear to my heart. I was your student when it came out. Heath Ledger is the Joker in The Dark Knight.
Yeah, this one for me, I mean, you know what I think of comic book movies and superhero movies. I think there's been too many. I think the market has been flooded with them, and it's led to some real turkeys. You know, if they're going to make good ones, make good ones. But if you're going to make them for the sake of making them, don't do it. The Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies were terrible and made for all the wrong reasons.
Agreed.
When I heard that Christopher Nolan was rebooting Batman, I didn't know what to think. And then I saw Batman Begins, and I thought, okay, this guy's the real deal. That was pretty cool. When I saw The Dark Knight, I was knocked out. From beginning to end, this movie has a pulse and an energy that just drives it. Heath Ledger shows up as the Joker, and he's absolutely diametrically opposite to whatever Jack Nicholson was, whatever Cesar Romero was, whatever anyone that ever played this part has been. He loves chaos. He adores chaos. And he doesn't want to kill Batman. He makes that very clear. He says to him in a riff on the Jerry Maguire line, "You complete me." And it's a sensational piece of acting. A great deal of it improvised. You know, they really gave Heath Ledger a lot of freedom. And it took a lot out of him. It took very much out of him. He was really beaten up by this movie. And unfortunately died before he ever saw it. He certainly saw the rushes, but he didn't see the completed film, which is a real shame because this and Brokeback Mountain will be forever his legacy. And The Dark Knight made superhero movies art. It absolutely proved that a superhero film could be a work of art. And there's been 2 or 3 since that are on that level.
Yeah, Heath Ledger, I remember when he was cast, everyone flipped out, you know, as they do whenever Batman or the Joker is cast. And I had complete trust in Christopher Nolan after he made Batman Begins. I loved the teaser at the very last scene of Batman Begins where they talk about the Joker playing card, and I was so jazzed up for the sequel. Like, I can't wait to see the Joker in this universe that he's created. Heath Ledger was responsible for a lot of that character. As you mentioned, the improvisation. He designed the Joker's makeup. The scenes where the Joker is filming on a handy cam, Heath Ledger directed those scenes. He was given the camera and given free rein to do what he wanted. There was a scene where he interrupts a party at Bruce Wayne's penthouse, and Michael Caine forgot his lines because he was so blown away by seeing the Joker for the first time. Now, of course, Joaquin Phoenix has since won the Academy Award for Best Actor for playing a version of the Joker. I have been vocal in my opinion that Arthur Fleck is not really the Joker. He's an alternate world version similar to the Joker. But as far as Heath Ledger's characterization goes, as someone who has known the character my whole life and is aware of the character's history, Heath Ledger's Joker was everything the Joker is supposed to be. Diametrically opposed to Batman, a psycho terrorist who, as you said, he loves Batman in a very twisted and dark way. And there are so many great and quotable lines from the movie, but my favorite is towards the end when he's hanging upside down after Batman has knocked him off the edge of a building, and he's falling to his death, and he's laughing because to the Joker, there is no greater victory than to die at the hands of Batman. But then Batman saves him and pulls him up by the grappling gun, and he's like, "Oh, you just couldn't let me go, could you?" And he summed up the relationship between Batman and the Joker absolutely perfectly. He said, "This is what happens when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. I think you and I are destined to do this forever." And anyone who knows those characters knows that that was just spot on. I think it's a shame that there are still some people who say Heath Ledger won that Oscar because he died. That's a crock of shit. He absolutely deserved it. And matched, if not surpassed, Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter to become one of, if not the greatest cinematic villain in history.
I agree.
All right, then. Moving on. Number 2, we have Dennis Hopper in Blue Velvet.
This is one of the most electrifying performances I've seen in my lifetime. Dennis Hopper was pretty much washed up as an actor in the 80s. Nobody would hire him after his behavior on Apocalypse Now. If you watch the documentary Hearts of Darkness, he was stoned. He was stoned out of his gourd. And Francis Coppola didn't know what to do with him. There's a scene of him in Hearts of Darkness talking to him and says, "Just do the lines, Dennis. Just do the fucking lines. That's all I need you to do." Years later, David Lynch was casting Frank Booth in Blue Velvet. And Dennis Hopper got a hold of the script, read it, and met with David Lynch and said, "I have to do this character. This is me." And David Lynch said, "If this is you, we're in trouble." And he said, "Let me do it." So he cast him. And Dennis Hopper responded with just a stunning, stunning piece of acting. Frank Booth is an alcoholic. He's a drug addict. He's a sadist. He loves Blue Velvet. He loves the feel of Blue Velvet. And on his hip, he wears a can of nitrous oxide, laughing gas, which enhances the drugs and alcohol and the mania of his sadism. Whenever he's doing his madness, he turns it on, inhales, and through the course of the film, whenever we see that mask come out, we cringe because we know something terrible is going to happen. It's an astonishing performance. It's bigger, it's larger than life. He goes over the top, and yet it's absolutely in character for him to go over the top. The Academy, absolutely, the gutless Academy, nominated him that year for another film he made called Hoosiers, where he plays a recovering alcoholic who helps coach a basketball team. The critics all gave him Best Supporting Actor for Blue Velvet, LA, New York, the National Society, but the Academy didn't have the guts. They just didn't have the guts to nominate him for this performance, and shame on them.
All right, we're now at the top of the list. Coming in at number 1, you can hear your drum rolls out there. Robert Duvall in Apocalypse Now.
Yeah, if anybody can find me a better supporting performance, good for them, but I'll never agree with it. Robert Duvall's in Apocalypse Now for 20 minutes. And as brilliant a film as Apocalypse Now is, and it is a brilliant film, it never quite recovers from Robert Duvall's exit. We first encounter him when they need somebody to take them in and drop the boat at a different place. He finds out that where they need to go has great beach break. So he decides they're going to bomb a village that's been there for 1,000 years so his men can go surfing. And they do it. That's exactly what they do. And they turn on the music, Wagner's Ride of the Valkyries, as they're coming in. And we see the poor Viet Cong running for cover, terrified, getting to their anti-aircraft guns, hoping to fight, but they don't have a chance. And Duvall's chopper lands, and he gets out and he struts around, bullets whizzing by, grenades being thrown, bombs going off. He never flinches. He never blinks. He's standing on the beach and somebody hollers incoming and everybody dies for cover. He stays standing. He just knows. There's a line in the movie, Kilgore knows he's not going to get so much as a scratch over here. And it's absolutely true. He's oblivious to all the conflict because he wants to surf. And he calls in a napalm drop because they're still shooting, still causing all kinds of trouble. And when it's over, he stands on the beach and he looks wistful and starts talking about the smell of napalm in the morning and how there was a napalm drop and it took out everybody. There wasn't one stinking body left. And he says, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. It smells like victory. And he sits there for a minute and he says, someday this war is going to end, and walks out of frame. And he's angry, he's hurt, he's wounded that, yeah, someday this war is going to end. Then what's he going to do? How does a guy like this go back to civilian life? I mean, he doesn't. He'll go back and go postal on somebody. It's an astonishing performance and was nominated for the Academy Award. To the shame of the Academy, it lost. It won several critics awards. And Duvall's preparation was watching sergeants, watching these guys, watching the cavalry for the United States Marine Corps. And he said, these guys are very vain. They're very, vanity is a big thing to them. Their hats have to be on just right. So he modeled himself after several of them. And his name in the film is perfect. Kilgore. Perfect. And a staggering piece of acting by one of my favorite actors.
There you have it, folks. That's our list for the top 15, almost, greatest supporting actor performances in the history of cinema. If you guys have any other subjects you'd like to hear us talk about on the podcast, any other countdowns, lists, ideas, shoot us a message. Find us on social media. We're always open to ideas. John, thanks again.
My pleasure.
There you have it, folks. The 15 greatest best supporting actor performances in cinematic history. Thanks to all our listeners for tuning in. Be sure to check us out on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and especially our YouTube channel. Hit like and subscribe for this, all past and future podcasts. Go check out the previous installments, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Supporting Actress. Got some cool shows coming up. John Allen and I are going to be taking a look at the 1980s. We've also going to do a spotlight on the work of Mr. Tom Cruise. And John and I take a look at the films of Quentin Tarantino. Till next time, see you at the movies.